listening to the Retail Razor Show, where your expert hosts and their guests cut through the clutter in retail and retail tech to shape the future of retail.
Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 19 of the Retail Razor Show. It's the Season 3 finale episode on the Razor's Edge, and I'm your host, Ricardo Belmar.
And I'm your co-host, Casey Golden. Welcome to Retail's favorite podcast, where we cut through the clutter to give you sharp insights on the retail industry and retail technology. It's the show for product junkies, commerce technologists, and everyone else in retail and retail tech alike. Welcome to the Season 3 grand finale episode.
All right, Casey. So here's how we're going to roll today. Since this is a special episode to close out Season 3 of the show. So first, we're going to check in on our top 10 predictions for 2023. And yeah, technically those were from Season 2. But now that we're very squarely into 2024, it's time we checked in to see what we got right, nailed it, versus what we totally got wrong and completely missed the mark on.
This is my favorite part. Yes, I am quite competitive. You better be keeping score on who's got more right than wrong.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good. But Ricardo, we come from two very different perspectives. And I think that's why everybody enjoys listening to us.
Yeah, I have to agree. Hopefully this won't get too ugly and too competitive, but good thing there's no audience to throw things at us, though. So for the second part of the show, then after we get through that, we'll do a little bit of fan favorite reminiscing about our favorite parts of the season and maybe close it out by sharing a few choice previews for Season 4.
Well, you did just give it away that there is going to be a Season 4, but Season 3 did quite well. I guess we really are more than meets the eye.
You did that on purpose, didn't you, stealing my line?
I did.
All right. So let's just get started then and jump right into grading our top 10 predictions for 2023. So let's just run down the list, starting with the first one. Casey, you're up first. That was private label taking over the shelves. Is this a you nailed it or missed the mark prediction?
I nailed it. Private label goods are increasingly dominating the retail shelves as consumers prioritize value and quality, prompting retailers to expand their in-house brands. This trend reflects a shift in consumer trust, with white labels offering comparable or superior products at more competitive prices than traditional brand names. However, there are a number of manufacturers from China doing the same thing, and consumers are going to need to become very savvy as the pendulum of trust will swing on a very thin line.
Interesting.
There will be many new brands that will be entering into the U.S. market because we're not the only ones that saw this trend.
Yeah. So everyone's going to start to become really smart really soon on how to tell the difference between a genuine private label versus just a knockoff brand that's cheap.
Yep. We got to be a little bit smarter on what you see is not oftentimes what you get these days in commerce.
That's so true. That's so true.
All right. And now it's your turn. Prediction number 2 was the retail media network evolution, with B2B services growing out from ad services. Nailed it or missed the mark? As if I don't know what you're going to say.
Well, I mean, this has to be one easy one for me. This is totally nailed it because, let's face it, retail media got even bigger in just about every way last year. I mean, some of the specific things I know I was predicting was a lot more in-store focus. I think a lot of that is there. It was talked about at NRF this month. It was talked about at Grocery Shop. I mean, it was all over the place about how that was the natural expansion, even connected TV and other digital mediums for it being tied into the media network. And then the last piece I had in there, which Walmart's done it really well. I still think it's a trend, but I'm still going to call this one a win. And that was the B2B services growing out for it because it's the incremental revenue from these things is enough that retailers, I think, keep seeing more and more of them looking for this kind of revenue versus the transactional revenue they get from consumers because the margin's better.
I mean, it's pretty incremental at this point. There's very low comp numbers. It's incremental revenue on the balance sheet. New revenue channels. I agree. All right. Prediction number 3, returns management. This one is yours too. Was it a top IT investment?
All right. So I may have slightly missed a little bit on this one. Maybe I'm going to claim partial credit on the fact that it's still certainly talked about a lot, and it was a trendy thing. I mean, everybody was worried about returns management. I think the second half of my prediction was that it would really be a top IT investment helped by AI technology, and that we'd see everybody spending money on trying to solve this. That part, I guess, just didn't really, I don't know. I don't think that one really happened. And I know plenty of vendors with really good solutions that help with this, but I don't think enough retailers, as I thought would, really made this a top IT investment. They invested a little bit in it, but it wasn't the top one. So I'll claim partial credit on this one.
Yeah, I agree. It's a huge global problem. It is, but it's not a key KPI
Yeah.
that I find.
Yeah.
It comes up in general conversation when looking at the current state of the
Yeah.
business. Everybody kinds of seem to leave the returns percentage off the deck
Mhm.
as if it didn't
Yeah.
exist.
Like
I
it's
don't
going
think
to fade
anybody
away.
wants
Yeah.
to see it or own it. And I think for our listeners, it's very common for an e-commerce store to have between a 25 and 40% online
Yeah.
return rate.
Yeah.
I think this year, maybe more of you guys should be carving out
Yeah.
some dollars
I think it
to
definitely is one of those
close that up.
people need to look at it a little bit more attention on it.
Prediction number 4, store automation for frontline workers and store ops for a lower labor cost.
All right, I'm
What do
going
you
to
think,
make this one
Ricardo?
yet another partial credit one, mostly thanks to AI solutions I've seen some retailers putting out there that helps make life better and easier, automating a lot of the mundane tasks for frontline workers. But I think the original thought here was more about leveraging a lot of automation for when retailers can't hire enough people for their store teams. But it's not, I guess it's not 100% clear exactly what impact retailers are getting from that yet. It may be too soon for that for the ones that have done some of these implementations. I still would claim there's enough of a labor shortage for most retailers that they need some of this automation help or AI help. But did that really save them in 2023 from a lack of having enough retail staff? I'm not sure that part of it really came true, which was the implied expectation from this prediction. So I think retailers are on the right path with that. The technology is there to help. It's a matter of time, I think, and it's just going to take longer maybe than my prediction claimed for it to have full impact. So I'll take half credit for that one.
Yeah, I've seen more impact in grocery
Mhm.
and training,
Yeah.
onboarding,
Yeah.
offboarding, not necessarily less so in fashion
Mm.
or apparel,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in order to really leverage AI, you got to know what these people do all day for their job. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
is going to be the biggest
Mhm.
challenge, is
That
understanding the
understanding. Yeah.
context.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'd like to see some IT people do some job shadows on the
Yep.
floor.
Yep. I hear you. I think you're 100% on that one. I think we've had plenty of guests over the season who would agree with that statement and reinforced it plenty of times. All right. Prediction number 5 was yours, Casey. BNPL, buy now, pay later, explodes even more.
All right. So this is partial credit for me. Yeah, the growth was
Yeah.
there. Holiday 2023, the real winner was buy now, pay later,
So true.
not any one retailer.
Yeah.
But it didn't really explode in the sense that regulators haven't really come
Yeah.
after them
Yeah.
yet. And they're still going strong. Really, I really thought that the bubble would have burst by now. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
And
I think it got swept under the rug.
You got to, I guess you do get.
Basically.
Yeah. There was, I forget which one. Was it a firm that maybe stumbled a little bit? But we had Roshan from Square who talked about Afterpay. They were seeing plenty of growth and things were going really well for them. And it helped fuel a lot for holiday. So yeah, I guess the exploding part is true. Maybe not 100% in the way they predicted, but it was still because the growth is there. So you get partial credit for that one. All right. Prediction number 6,
He
Casey.
mentioned,
Oh, yeah.
I'll mention that the younger generation and like Gen Z
good
really
point.
like this
Yes.
buy now, pay
Yes.
later.
100%. Yeah.
And they don't have credit cards the way we
That's
do.
true. That's so true. Yeah.
And so I do find it interesting. It may be a bit more responsible than the way we charged
Yeah.
everything on our
And
credit
maybe
card.
that's the difference. Maybe that's the difference. Yeah. All right. Prediction number 6, Casey. It's a CDP explosion, or was it?
Well, I can also only claim partial credit on this. It was a CDP explosion. I think $683 billion was spent on CDPs last
Wow.
year. Just not really in retail. So it's what everyone is talking about, but act. Everyone needs them. Everyone wants them. But the complexity and integration challenges associated with incorporating CDPs, especially into existing legacy systems in retail, has been a key deterrent. Some organizations have been even more hesitant, not just for the high cost of the implementation and the amount of the migration, but just the resource investments required for adoption and maintenance. So there are players in the space dedicated to easing this pain and committed to providing seamless integrations. But it's really going to come down to who makes it the easiest for $1 billion company to adopt a CDP and not take 2 years to do it.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time working with Microsoft partners that are in this space, both in the technology of it as well as doing the implementation help. And I definitely see a lot of movement there. I think you're right, though, that at least in retail, it's maybe a little too slow or slower than it should be to adopt, because I can't imagine just how many times I'm talking about customer data platforms and how much everybody needs this. And we had guests who talked about this, right? We had, I think Nadina talked about it from Vitamin Shop. I think even on the CPG side, right? Mir, we could have talked for hours with him about how they're leveraging customer data. The importance is there. I think you got that part for sure. It's just the usual technology deployment slowness we see in retail that kind of maybe bit this one a little bit and slowed things down in the end.
Yeah. So I'm going all in for 2020.
There you go. Stick with it. All right. Moving on to prediction number 7, loyalty program evolution. There was a prediction you had here about paid tiers and maybe a little bit of Web3 sprinkled into that as part of that evolution. So I don't know. What do you think about this one?
Although loyalty programs did go strong for 2023 for many retailers, I can't claim that Web3 played a part out as much as it should have.
Yeah.
There was a lot of confusion between Web3 and crypto.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not the same thing. Yep. It doesn't have to be together. One doesn't require the other.
Yep, exactly.
But I didn't see any paid tiers anywhere within my realm. Personally, all of my loyalty programs over the past year have been ultra lame. And in some cases, the brand should really be embarrassed.
No, so kind of going in the other direction, evolving in the wrong way.
It's a huge opportunity. A huge opportunity. There has been significant investments last year in loyalty. But as a consumer, I haven't seen the results on my.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So,
I mean, there are definitely classic examples of amazing loyalty programs, and I guess amazing defined in terms of just how many people join the loyalty program to help drive that retail business. You can hold up, obviously, Amazon Prime. We can say Walmart Plus, Ulta Beauty's loyalty program, drives like 80, 90% of their business?
insane.
Yeah, it's insane. But you're right. Other than Amazon and Walmart, who's doing paid tiers for these? Barnes & Noble has a paid loyalty program.
Yeah, maybe it's because of the more like just prices going up in general.
Yeah, maybe that slowed it down.
That is because everybody's complaining about the price of eggs.
Yeah. There are only so many subscriptions every consumer is willing to pay for, right? So who's going to give up their Netflix subscription for a paid retail or loyalty tier? I think that's the question everybody's asking.
For $1 a month.
Exactly. Unless it's going to be as massive as a Walmart Plus or an Amazon Prime, maybe it's hard to put enough value in there.
All right, Ricardo. Prediction number 8. It's all you. Anywhere commerce versus immersive commerce. And this was one of our themes for the season too.
Yeah, I'm going to claim partial credit on this one. We wouldn't have made it a theme, right, if we didn't think it was happening and a big deal and it was worth talking about. I'm willing to accept that there's a ton of innovation here happening in this space. Think about just episodes we had. We had Cynthia Holland from Avi.io talking about anywhere commerce. I think we had so much good stuff happening there. But I think in the end, you know what held back, I can't claim total success on this one, is the deployments aren't really there yet. It's still a lot of tests, trials, experiments, baby steps. It's not really, everybody's not going all in yet, I think.
Yeah, brands need to move beyond the glitter, especially with POCs. Taking a tagline from Diesel Jeans, be brave.
Yeah, exactly. Be bold, be brave.
Build the future now. There's nothing to wait for. Just
people and watch the consumers come.
That's-
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. All right. Moving on to prediction number 9, Casey. This is a good one. It's Web3 versus the Metaverse. Which one won out? Or is the answer neither?
Okay, this one's a little bit heartbreaking. I think the only winners were attorneys.
Quite possibly.
It's like a completely new division of every law firm. I think more brands spent times with legal discussing this than with their engineering teams.
Yeah.
While there were some very cool things happening in this space, I mean, hello, LuxLock, we were led the way here in a lot of ways, being the first to do a few things. I can't claim that retailers everywhere went all in on Web3 or the Metaverse.
Yeah.
Although I had bets on Web3 versus Metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
Brands are still experimenting. Some brands have fully operational divisions to experiment in this space and budgets to experiment, but it's still not mainstream for either. I think that there's a huge opportunity here on both the Web3 side for tracking, authentication, warranty services, ownership. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity on the Metaverse side with virtual stores, marketing capabilities, video games, really attracting consumers at a younger age and just allowing brands to be more playful.
Yeah.
But going back to the anywhere commerce and immersive commerce, you're just going to have to be bold, be brave, build something that you enjoy, and have a vision of what it's going to look like in 5 years. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess it was last season we had Alan Smithson on talking about what he was doing with the mall and the Metaverse, and that's launched, right? So there's opportunity out there to see some cool things. I know Alan had showed me some cool stuff happening with Starburst, right, and building their world. So I think there's definitely some opportunity. I guess the challenge really is this a matter of if you build it, will they come or not? Because you still have to rely on consumers adopting the right technology, right, to jump in. So it's not just a matter of retailers choosing to do something. There has to be enough critical mass for consumers to do it. And I guess we'll have to see if Apple's Vision Pro is going to move the needle on this or not.
Yes.
So just like Neil Redding told us this season, right? Now that spatial computing is something that we all know what that means and talk about, we'll have to see what impact that has in 2024 and see if that changes.
I agree. They launched with something like, I don't even know how it's possible, but like 1 million apps in the App Store work with these goggles.
Yeah. Right.
Something's coming this year. And
we'll see it.
There's space for this. Okay. Ricardo. That brings us to prediction number 10. And honestly, this might have well been a ringer for you. I think way too easy. Generative AI. I mean, you had zero chance of this one not working out.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to call this one the sure bet. So yeah, it's a solid nailed it on this one. I think I still get credit for that though, right? I mean, it was still a prediction. It counts.
Yeah.
It counts.
I mean, to me, I don't like cheaters. So I'm not really giving anyone credit for generative AI. It can die in all the applications that I've seen this year. I've been shown clothes that I can't buy, places that I can't visit, and people that don't exist. And I'm not really impressed personally. As a consumer, you've just sold me a dream that is impossible to experience for real.
There's still some things to work out. I mean, there's good use cases. There's, let's call them the bad use cases where it's not really adding value, but you're just cheating things. But I think there's been plenty. This is an easy win only because there's been so many good use cases, whether it's personalizing things in a real way, not in the fake way like you're talking about, where the things don't exist. So there's that. There's really cool things around summarizing customer reviews that retailers are doing. There's a lot of cool things happen on the production side to actually help produce real products in a faster timeline than before. And I think some of this ties into, you remember back to season 2 when we had Ashley from Ventana on, who was working on the technology for the 3D models and things for products. You start connecting the dots between these things, and generative AI really starts to make the whole production process so much smoother and faster. Once people really start getting into, we're going to start to see some really cool things come to market a lot faster and easier, and hopefully with a lot less waste. as well. So I think there's lots of upside to it that we just have to get there. But I think last year was the year when everybody tried it out and played with it. And it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's true. It's a no-brainer even at the beginning of the year to say, yeah, this is going to be big. And it was. And there's lots of examples for it. You could put it on this year's list too, right? And it would be a ringer as well because there's going to be lots of goodness coming from it. Hopefully not as much bad stuff that you keep running into.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we can separate like generative AI B2B and generative AI consumer. I hate all the consumer applications that I've seen, but the B2B aspects that I've seen with like PLM systems and holograms, sample creation and product renderings to essentially go outside the box, create more SKUs, definitely some compelling attributes. I'm just ready to see less in social media.
So let's say less PR stuff and more real stuff. I think we'll see. I think
business.
Yeah. No, I'll call this one when we come back to do our predictions for this year. I'll probably call this one the year of AI ROI instead of just the year of AI play.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's the things that actually drive a return that'll matter.
Okay. So apparently I'm keeping score. So let's total it up here. Accounting for partial credit on some, you have 3 out of a possible 5 points. And it looks like I have 2.5 out of 5. Go figure.
Close. It was close. I just managed to
be so fancy.
Yeah. Well, a slight, barely pulling out a win there. Maybe that makes me more than meets the eye today, right?
It's too late to pull off that reference. Like, it's not going to happen. I already used it.
Yeah, right. You beat me to it again.
Let's move on to some highlights.
Season 4. All right. So season 3 highlights.
I've already taken it out of our script for season 4, actually, Ricardo. So this might be the last time anyone hears it.
It might be. It might be. All right. So what was your favorite episode of season 3 and why?
Favorite episode is The Magic of RFID with JP Kamel. I don't really stay on top of this stuff as much as I'd like to. He really broke down the applications of RFID down to business managers. To just really understand potential use cases and frankly defined what each of these types of technology are and define the acronyms.
Yeah. That was a great session. Yeah.
Really, if anybody is still curious about what RFID is and how it can be used, take a listen to this episode because
absolutely.
You can walk away leading a conversation in the office with that.
100%. Yep.
I really felt it was good.
Well,
what about you?
For me, I think it was our video commerce episode with Vincent Yang from Firework. I'm still, if I think back to that episode, I notwithstanding that I love the topic, right, with video commerce, and I'm a big fan of that as a use case and everything, but Vincent is just so knowledgeable on this and has so insightful in everything he talked about. This was one of those episodes, probably not since we did the big e-commerce episode season 2, right, with Brian Dove, where we could have just kept on talking for days on that topic and not run out of things to say. And it would still have been super interesting. That probably could have been, if we had let ourselves have a 3-hour episode, it probably would have been.
I agree. I really enjoy Vincent. And I have to say, if only our listeners could listen to the first 30 minutes before we hit record and the 30 minutes after we stop, it's like where all the good stuff is happening. We should really start.
Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said we could have had a 3-hour episort on that one, and it would have been incredibly interesting, and you would have been glued to your speaker listening to that.
Yeah.
All right.
What was your favorite moment?
Oh, favorite moment. I have an interesting one. During the grocery shop recap episode with Christina Gustafson and Ben Miller, when Jeff Roster was a guest host with me on that one. And Ben actually said at one point, we've actually managed to get through 20 minutes of this recording without ever saying the words retail media. And just the look on Jeff's face at that point, because of all of the times that I have poked fun at him for ignoring retail media until now, I think that was just priceless.
Rare for you
I know.
and your friend.
Which, by the way, if you remember, was Christina's comment, because even she said it's like rare for Ben not to bring up retail media in less than 2 minutes, and just as much as it is for me. So the fact that we managed to go 20 was just amazing.
My favorite moment was Ron Thurston announcing that he's joined me on the tech side of retail with his launch of
Yeah.
Aussie.
Oh, yeah.
And so I am thrilled that he's joined the dark side.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, be on the lookout for perhaps a season 4 episode where Ron comes back and shares the launch experience and all the juicy details.
Amazing.
All right. So what surprised you the most this season?
I think you know exactly which episode
I could
surprised me
guess.
the most. It was like visible in my facial expressions. I think I even dropped the F-bomb a couple times in like the pre-interview process. Mir Ali from Kraft Heinz literally blew
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah.
I don't come from big box CPG.
Mhm.
I had no idea how advanced the data usage was at a CPG company of that size.
Yeah.
Nor would I have expected the culture
Yeah.
he's cultivating for his team
Mhm.
to be creative, curious, and test, try
It was amazing. Yeah.
things and fail.
Yeah.
Just try things. I was beyond surprised.
That is definitely one I would be telling someone, even if you weren't in the CPG space, you want to go, and if you hadn't listened to that episode, go listen to it, because you'll learn so much about how to actually leverage data, especially if you're in any kind of retail or CPG business. It didn't matter. Even if you're outside of grocery, Mir had so many great use cases and examples of how his team leverages the data they have to really help drive the business. And it really was amazing to learn from him how they're applying all that data.
Yeah. Very rare in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
Would we come across something like this? And I just, maybe I'm biased, but I always think like we do things better than everyone else. Us, like brands and fashion and apparel and retail. I was completely shocked.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Well, and speaking of data, my surprising one was our last episode, actually, with Nadina Guglielmetti from the Vitamin Shop. She leads as our Chief Customer Experience Officer. Also, really interesting things to see how her team is taking advantage of the data they capture around customers, how to both improve their loyalty program. She gave us some examples of that, but then just the overall in-store experience and how well their store team members engage with customers. So much of that is driven by very specific actions and things that they're doing as they learn about their customers. So I think that was a really smart way of doing that. And again, not necessarily in a CPG space, but very specialized, right? It's definitely vitamin, obviously, and wellness being a specialty area. I was really impressed with just so many interesting things that she's doing there. That one surprised me the most, I think.
Yeah, their commitment to customer education and building customer loyalty and retention is very admirable.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we had 6 retail transformers this season, of which both Nadina and Mir were 2 of those. But of the 6, which one stood out to you the most, Casey?
I'd say Cynthia Holland, CEO of Mobby.
Yeah.
Got to give her some props for forging a new channel of anywhere commerce, bringing commerce to cars.
Yeah.
I think it's very compelling, and it's able to be adopted across every retail category that I can literally think of. I think it's very relevant and interesting.
Very innovative.
And
Yeah, I agree. I think that was definitely a standout. I mean, so I'm thinking about which was most unique of the 6 to me. And I think I have to go with Jeffrey P. McNulty, because of every retail transformers we've talked to, Jeffrey really had the most interesting in terms of substance and quantity of frameworks and examples around how to be a retail leader and how, and I guess I should say how to be a good retail leader. I had so many things to say. Again, another one of these where you have to say, well, there's a reason why he has a successful best-selling book on this topic, because he's just got so many good examples from his own experiences and other brands that he's worked with and helped. I think that one was probably the most unique. And we've had lots of folks, right, on the show who've been our retail transformers who focus on that human element in retail. But I think his take was really unique on that.
Yeah, he did really flex on what it is to be a leader on the floor.
Yeah.
And I think it always has to come back down to the experience on the floor.
Yep. All right, so we had 3 themes for the season, right? AI and automation, immersive and anywhere commerce, and back to basics. Which one do you think had the most impact? And which one had the most fun episode of the season?
I mean, I think this goes into like why we chose these as a theme in the first place, but immersive and anywhere commerce is always going to be the most fun, but automation and AI have the biggest impact.
Yeah, I agree with that.
While at the same time, like back to basics just needs to get done in order for us to have a future in retail, period.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, like with the back to basics theme, that's the one that really brings us back to human beings at the center of this business, right? Because in the end, retail is a people business.
Yeah, I'd make an entire season on back to basics and just remind everyone what retail is, why we got into it in the first place, and why are we still having the same problems we had 20 years ago?
Exactly.
Like it's time
I know,
to
right?
solve this and move on.
Yeah.
Because there's really cool things out there.
Yeah.
We had 2 miniseries this season.
Right.
Blade to Greatness and the Data Blades. What stood out to you most about these 2 series, Ricardo?
I think I have to say Blade to Greatness may be my new favorite part of doing the podcast, just because when I think of all 3 guests in this, right, with Ron Thurston, with April Sabral, with Jeffrey again, they all brought such unique insights to a wide variety of issues, right? We covered things around raw leadership skills that retailers need to be. April brings such an incredible insight around how to be positive no matter what it is that's happening, right, in the business. How do you turn something into a positive? And of course, Ron, no one advocates for store teams and the kind of work and management that needs to happen in the store and recognition that needs to happen for store teams at corporate. No one does that better than Ron. And I think that combination of those 3 people we had on that series, to me, just makes it both fun and unique and insightful. And it's probably the best part of the show, really. And then with Data Blades, I mean, that one I think is also a lot of fun in a different way, because Georgina really helps us bring some unbelievable data points that you just wouldn't think about, right? Just based on asking a simple question at the point of sale to consumers. And I got to say, my favorite one of those that we had with her had to be the one about self-checkout, because you know what my feelings are about self-checkout generally.
I just went to the West, spent 6 weeks on the West Coast, and I just wanted to smash some of these self-checkout things. It's so different from living in Manhattan, right? Like it is such a different experience. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, right.
I don't handle this.
Right.
So I'm going to just I'm just going to stay on our little island here. But it's very interesting because we do talk about data all the time, but I don't think so many people understand where everybody else is getting their data from and how they're crunching these numbers. So I am a bit of a data junkie.
Yeah.
You tell me a percentage, I'm like, out of what? Right? I'm like the naysayer of like, sure.
Right.
30% of 30 people.
Right.
Great. That's nothing. Don't care. Means nothing to me. I really enjoyed the Data Blades because it was just really interesting data. It comes from people who we know, comes from companies that we know their processes. And I feel very secure in repeating these numbers. And I find it very compelling.
Yeah.
And I think the more data we understand and the more KPIs and information we know from other industries, there's always this opportunity for an intersection to take those findings, even from grocery, to apply them to beauty.
Yeah.
So I think we should keep those going.
100%. Absolutely.
All right. Bonus question. Everybody loves a bonus. Which one mattered the most to the industry?
Oh, well, this will be a big surprise to everyone, but I'm going to actually say 2 episodes, and both of them were our Taylor's versions of episodes because, if it's worth repeating, it matters. And of course, we had NRF for Beginners with Andy Lodato, which we had done a year ago, and we brought that back and refreshed it with Andy. And then I can't say enough about the impact and importance of the work that Retail ROI does in this industry. It really is all about how retail recognizes and gives back and tries to improve the community around this industry. And I think Retail ROI really embodies that the best. So again, those, we had one of our very first episodes of the show was around the history of Retail ROI. And this was going to be this month was the 15th anniversary Super Saturday event for Retail ROI. And it was a huge success. It was a sold out event with so many retailers attending. So I really have to give the nod to both of those because of their importance. And at the end of the day, it's Taylor's world and we're all just living in it.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Ricardo, your face is on a lot of shirts running around.
That is true.
NRF that
is
weekend.
true. Yep. We can thank the retail ROI team for that and the team at Incisive for coming up with that one. Yeah.
It's awesome. All right, Ricardo, how much do we want to give away for season 4?
Well, I guess we don't want to give away too much, but definitely everyone be on the lookout for a season 4 trailer coming soon. That'll sure to make you anxious for new episodes.
And I guess I could mention that we're going to continue our 2 mini-series.
100%. Yep. Blade to Greatness and Data Blades will be back for another season each. And we'll actually finally launch them as their own podcast series. So spoiler alert there, standalone podcast for those two. So maybe that's the big news that we can share, is that the Retail Razor Show is expanding in that way. We'll still have this main show, but you'll see both of those miniseries show up as their own podcast in your favorite player. So if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, and newsflash, you're going to see a Retail Razor channel popping up in your app very soon.
Love that. Those 2 series are amazing. And if you've been watching our YouTube channel, then you already know that you can watch those series there and on their own as their own podcast on YouTube as well.
Right. And one could also say that we may just be expanding those miniseries and, I don't know, adding maybe 1 or 2 new ones in addition to those 2. So stay tuned, faithful listeners and viewers. You may see us feature a few more special topics around education and retail and AI that you won't want to miss.
And of course, we will be back with some incredible retail transformers for you.
Yes. And I know one thing we've been asked many times now, and that's for the return of the Retail Avengers.
I love that I'm like Captain America.
Exactly.
But we're not giving that away just yet. You'll have to wait and see what happens for that.
But for now, I think it's time to call this episode a wrap, Casey.
Yes, it is. If you enjoyed our show, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Goodpods. Remember to smash that subscribe button in your favorite podcast player and catch us on YouTube so you don't miss a minute. A big thank you to our Goodpod listeners for helping us regularly rise to the top 3 spots in the indie management and indie marketing podcast charts. If you want to know more about today's show, please check out the show notes for handy links and more deets. I'm your co-host, Casey Golden.
And please connect with us and share your feedback on Twitter at KCC Golden, Ricardo_Belmar, and at Retail Razor. Or find us on LinkedIn, or of course on Threads and Instagram. And if you want all the highlights from each episode shipped straight into your inbox, subscribe to our Substack newsletter for full episode transcripts and bonus content. I'm your host, Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us.
Until season 4, keep cutting through the clutter in retail and retail tech and stay sharp. This is the Retail Razor Show.